Hi, I'm your host David, and welcome to another episode of The Edge, a Leaders Show. We're happy to have with us Mr. Mohammed Kian, President of Magma Development. Welcome to the show, Mr. Kian.
Thank you very much, David.
So to start us off, can you tell us a little bit more about your background? What made you interested in pursuing a career in real estate development?
First of all, when I started my education at the University of Waterloo in chemical engineering, I decided to do also a master's degree, both in chemical engineering programs. And after I graduated, I got hired by a printed circuit board manufacturing company where there was lots of chemicals and processes. So I worked for them for a number of years. Then I started my own technology company. But when I was working for those companies, I realized that there was lots of chemicals being processed during manufacturing of printed circuit boards, and the environmental impact was enormous. So I developed a system and a process to minimize and get rid of environmental impact of these chemicals used in the process. And that really led me into getting into properties which were impacted by different chemicals, maybe gas stations, maybe factories from many, many years ago where there was contamination in these properties. So I started to develop a system to clean up and remediate those properties. That was really the start of me getting into real estate by acquiring some of these properties and using our own techniques and hiring a third party to assist us in remediation of these properties. That's how I got into purchasing some of these properties and start building rental apartment units.
Well, that's very interesting. Can you tell us what factors influence you when you're setting locations for your for your development?
As a company and as a Magma Development, we focused on really properties with the chemical contaminations, which we call the process of greening brownfields. So we looked at the properties in the suburbs of Ontario, the smaller communities, where there were many, many sites with chemical contamination. And also in those communities, there were lots of demand for rental affordable units. So that was a right match for us to be able to acquire those properties at low cost, remediate, and then start building affordable rental units. So that was the strategy we had, and we started with this vision, and we have been quite successful on that.
That's very interesting. Can you tell us what some of the projects you're working on currently? What is Magma Development working on currently?
One of our largest project that we have been working on for the past 15 years is in the city of Aurelia. There was this large building from wartime, large piece of land, highly contaminated. So we acquired that one. We demolished the buildings and we started to remediate. After that, we constructed just over 330 units, which there are over 700-800 people are calling that development home for themselves. So that's what we refer to greening brownfields. We really took the highly contaminated brownfield, converted to a community for people to live and enjoy the community. Right now, we got over 1,500 units on the pipeline to develop. Most of them are in contaminated sites, which we are in the process of getting the permits and going through the red tapes, and it's going well. The biggest challenge in affordable rental units is really the problem of financing. The cost of construction, the cost of land is so high, it doesn't really justify going through a major developments while you are having a sustainable cash flow. And the banks are not receptive in financing these properties and these projects because it's expensive for them and the cash flow doesn't support servicing the debts. So there is a big challenge that I believe the government and the private sectors needs to work together to make this happen. And the government has done a great job in the last 10 years through CMHC by waiving the HST. Some of municipalities are waiving development charges. So these are happening, and these are a great encouragement for private sectors to develop these properties.
Very nice. What would you say is the key to your success in the industry?
As I said, we looked at a very niche market, which was taking on highly challenging contaminated sites, being able to buy them at a reasonable low cost, developing them after remediation, going through the construction, and developing rental apartment units where we are also managing those units ourselves. So I would say combination of our vision of one, greening brownfields. Number two was being able to use a efficient construction system and being able to manage after construction. So it has been all vertical integration operation for us to manage and run these apartment units efficiently. So I would say those are the key elements in making our company a successful company.
That's great. Can you describe your approach to sustainable development?
As I said, in an affordable rental industry, where we focus, the biggest challenge is the financing. And as everybody knows, we are facing a housing crisis. And because of this housing crisis, private sectors and public sector needs to partner up to address this huge demand in the marketplace. And we believe this can only happen when public and private sectors work close together. The last 5 to 10 years, municipalities are starting to speed up permits and planning process. That has been a huge advantage. As I mentioned, they have also been able to reduce the development charges or waive development charges completely. These are some of the elements is necessary for going forward in Ontario to be able to address this housing crisis. We believe in the next, say, 10 years, bare minimum, Ontario needs, I would say, roughly 200,000 units in the next 10 years, which really translates into 20,000 units a year. And this is quite achievable as long as the financing can make sense, as long as private sectors can make these more feasible financially. And by getting help from the provincial, federal government, as well as municipalities, I think in the next 10 years, we will be able to construct around 200,000 units. And this 200,000 units is not enough to address the housing crisis, but it's going to get there, and it's a realistic numbers for both private and public sectors to achieve this goal.
Thank you. That's very interesting. Can you tell us about a particularly challenging project you've worked on and how you have overcome its obstacles? Obviously, you've had a lot of projects.
I think at the beginning, again, the biggest problems we had was financing these projects, which we really had to bring lots of equity from other projects. We had to leverage other projects and other financial holdings we had to be able to make the construction of rental projects viable based on our great relationship with the banks that allowed us to get their financing. And another large challenges we faced was dealing with municipalities. As we all know, it's called red tapes. Sometimes it took 4, 5, 6 years to get approval, and that was very costly. We were able to develop a relationship with our consultants and professionals to work with us in a timely fashion by reducing costs, by getting our staff involved to reduce the money that we needed to spend on the development and planning and permit processes to reduce those costs. So this red taping was a real challenge, and it was really costly. So that was the second challenge. The third challenge was management of these units. So you were able to acquire a land, you develop going through construction, now you need to manage it. Management of a rental affordable housing is itself is there is a special expertise a company needs to have in order to succeed. And the reason I'm bringing this one up is, unfortunately, landlord-tenant boards are following policies and regulations from 50, 60, 70 years ago. They haven't changed. So as soon as there is an issue, they always feel and think landlords are at fault, and tenants can get away with not paying for months and months, sometimes a year. And this has been a major headaches for management companies and for landlords to be able to get the right tenants and make sure that they are paying on time. And we believe this has been a major struggle for our management company dealing with the landlord-tenant boards. But the good news is, because of our experience and being in the community for over 15 years, we have been able to develop a system where we pick and choose the right tenants who can fit into our community. In this regard, I think, based on what's happening in our AI world, I think artificial intelligence will be a tool will be used in the future to address landlord-tenant policies and procedures. I think it will be a great help to establish a fair system both for tenants and landlords. Right now is one-sided, is extremely frustrating and costly.
Right.
And this is an area that everybody hesitates to get into rental accommodation developments because they feel dealing with the tenants is a major struggle. So we are hoping that in the next 5-10 years, by introduction of artificial intelligence, we will get rid of these old, outdated procedures in landlord-tenants boards and come up with a fair system to treat everybody based on their rights and their reaction to the situation they are in. In other words, if the tenants feels that landlords are not treating them well, I think a landlord should pay for it, and vice versa.
Right. What would you say are your goals for the future?
Our goal is we got over 1,500 units on a pipeline to develop. Most of them are in the contaminated sites, which we have successfully remediated. We are working towards getting those developed. As a matter of fact, we have finished getting permits and we have finished going through the planning process in some of these properties. And in some of those properties that I'm referring, we are still in the process of negotiating with the municipalities. And we are actually bringing some of our projects to the province to understand the complexity of this project, especially from financing standpoint. Based on what I just referred to, being able to develop 200,000 units in Ontario, we believe our company will be able to work on between 15 to 2,000 units in the next 5-10 years to bring into the market where people can call this right now contaminated sites community, where they can call it home.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kian, for joining us for this interview. We really appreciate your time. And for all our viewers, I'm your host, David. Stay tuned for another episode of The Edge, a Leader Show.